Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Harvard Islamic Studies Circle HISC Seerah session 135. So this is the third we're doing around the ifk, the slander, and the fifth related to BanuMustaliq. So very briefly, the last couple of sessions, we've talked about how the Prophet ﷺ was returning from BanuMustaliq, and then once he's returning, there's a fight or an argument that breaks out between the Aus, between the Ansar and the Muhajir, and then the Prophet ﷺ calms it all down. Abdullah bin Ubai finds out about it, so he goes off on a rant and calls the Muslims dogs, and then how they will expel the Muslims. Then he gets called out. He denies it. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals Surah Munafiqun, just highlighting that he is a hypocrite and this is what he's done. And so he's very sore. And the Prophet ﷺ, to avoid a lot of other sort of tension, it gets the army to march full on, nearly 20 plus hours. They camp, rest, and then it's time for them to leave again. As they're about to leave, Aisha, she realizes that she's dropped her necklace. So she goes looking for the necklace. She can't find it. She comes back to the campsite. Everyone's gone. And then she finds the necklace actually there where the camel was. So she just thinks, oh, they'll miss me and they'll come back and get me. In the meantime, someone called Safwan bin Muattal, he sees her, recognizes her, says, let me give you a lift. Takes her into Medina. As they're getting into Medina, Abdullah bin Ubai, fresh from being exposed officially by the Qur'an, sees them coming in. So he starts to spread a lie, a slander against the both of them. Obviously, principally aimed at Aisha being the wife of the Prophet ﷺ. As soon as soon after she gets to Medina, she falls ill, obviously unrelated, and she's ill for a month. In that month, nothing happens from her side, but these rumors spread everywhere. Everyone's heard of them, and it's the talk of the town. It's trending. It's the main thing that people are talking about. She finally gets better. And then she accidentally finds out, and she's horrified. So she then leaves the Prophet's house, and then goes to her parents to check out the news. They say, yeah, that's true, or the rumor's true. In the meantime, now that the Prophet now that Aisha's sort of out from the next to the masjid, and she's with her parents, Prophet then starts to gather intel to see what's happened. Is there any truth in this? So he questions a few people. Osama bin Zaid says, he's got no concerns. Ali says, look, ask her maidservant, but if you want to divorce her, that's fine. There are lots of other people you can marry. Then the Prophet comes to Aisha and before that, he announces publicly in a gathering in Medina that he's got no issues either with people in his family or with the person that they allude to, Safwan. Then, having said that, he goes over to Abu Bakr Siddiq's house, meets the family, and asks Aisha, look, is there anything you want to tell me? If it's true, then if it's false, then that's fine. You've got nothing to worry about. Allah will be fine with you. If there is some truth in it, then this is the process of talking to his wife, the mother of the believers. And then if there is some truth in the rumor, then ask for Allah for forgiveness, and He'll forgive everything. And then she sort of freaks out. Says, how can you believe this as well? And then she looks to her mother and her father, who just sort of essentially shrug their shoulders, say, what can we say? And then she gets upset, looks to the wall and says, look, I'm just going to say as Yaqub said, or she said, the father of Yusuf, that I'm just going to be patient until Allah, sorts this matter out. And then at that point in time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then revealed the verses from Surah Noor, which essentially exonerate her. So what I just wanted to do quickly was just go through these verses. I'll sort of skip over the first 10 or so verses, and then or sort of 10, 15 verses, and then just sort of focus more on the other. So if you just bear with me as I sort of go through that, because it talks about, let's provide you the context, it talks about the punishment that the adulterers make, and what are the rules and regulations around these types of things. So Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. This is the chapter which we have sent down, and we've made it obligatory, it's commandment, and we've sent down bright signs in it so that you might take heed. The adulteress and the adulterer, then flog each of them with 100 stripes, and you should not be compassionate for them in the religion if you believe in Allah and in the last day, and let a party of the Muslims be present at the time of their punishment. And I mean, that refers essentially, it's clarified, it refers to the unmarried people. Obviously, the punishment for the married adulterer and adulteress is stoning. The adulterer, carries on, the adulterer should not marry anyone but an adulteress and a mushrik, and may not an adulteress but an adulterer or a mushrik, and this deed is forbidden to the believers. And those who blame chaste women and then don't bring 4 witnesses, flog them each with 80 stripes and never accept any evidence of theirs. And it is they that are the disobedient. But for those who repent, thereafter act aright, undoubtedly then Allah is forgiving the merciful. And those who malign their own wives, and they have no evidence except themselves, then evidence of any such of them, that he should bear witness 4 times in the name of Allah that he is truthful, and the 5th time that the curse of Allah be upon him if he is the liar. And the punishment shall avert from the wife if she bears witness 4 times in the name of Allah that the man is a liar. And 5thly, that this is the curse of Allah be upon the woman if the man is truthful. And if the grace of Allah and his mercy have not been upon you, then Allah, and that Allah is relenting and wise, he would not have opened your secret. Undoubtedly, those who have brought this big slander are a party from among you. Consider it not evil for you, rather it is good for you. For every one of them is the sin that he has earned, and among them he who has the greater share. For him is a mighty torment. Why did it not happen that when you heard it, that the Muslim men and the Muslim women would have thought good of their own people and say, this is manifest slander? Why did they not bring 4 witnesses against it? Therefore, since they didn't bring witnesses, they are indeed liars in the sight of Allah. And if the grace of Allah and his mercy had not been upon you in this world and in the hereafter, then a mighty torment would have touched you for muttering into that which you plunged. When you brought such talk to your tongues, hearing from one another, and uttered with your mouths that of which you had no knowledge, and thought it light, while it was great in the sight of Allah. And why did it not so happen when you heard it, you would have said, it is not befitting for us to speak about such a thing. Allah, hallowed be you, this is a great slander. Allah admonishes you now never to repeat of its like if you believe. And Allah explains to you his signs clearly. Allah is knowing and wise. Those who desire that scandal should spread amongst the Muslims, for them is a painful torment in this world and in the hereafter, and Allah knows and you know not. And if there had not been the grace of Allah and mercy upon you, and that Allah is kind, merciful to you, then you would have experienced its hardships. O believers, follow not the footsteps of shaitan, and whoever follows the footsteps of shaitan, then he will indeed tell you only indecency and evil things. And if there had not been the grace of Allah and his mercy upon you, no one of you would ever have been cleansed. Yes, Allah cleanses whoso he likes, and Allah is the hearing and knowing. And swear not amongst you, and swear not those amongst you who are men of excellence and means of giving to the kinsman and the needy and the emigrant, the muhajir, in the way of Allah. Let them forgive and overlook. Do you not love that Allah should forgive you? And Allah is forgiving and merciful. Undoubtedly, those who malign, unaware, chaste, believing women are cursed in the world and in the hereafter, and for them is a mighty torment on the day when their tongues and their hands and their feet will bear witness against them as to what they used to do. On that day, Allah will give them true punishment in full, and they will know that Allah alone is the manifest truth. And dirty women for dirty men for dirty women, and clean women for clean men, and clean men for clean women. They are free from what they are saying. For them is forgiveness and honourable provision. So these are some of the verses that were revealed. And again, it's quite clear, and Allah completely exonerates Aisha. And then when it was said to Aisha to, stand up and thank the Prophet ﷺ, this is the mother of Aisha saying, look, the verses have come down, thank the Prophet ﷺ. And Aisha turned around and says, look, I'm going to I will thank Allah for revealing this Qur'an. Again, she's still upset, undoubtedly and understandably, after all that she's gone through. So a couple of other sort of things to explain in those verses before we draw on some of the lessons, and that Abu Bakr Siddiq, he used to give sadaqah to Mistah. And Mistah is the one who obviously the son of Mistah, the one that was spreading some of these gossips and lies, and Mistah used to receive some sadaqah from Abu Bakr Siddiq because Mistah was poor. He was a muhajir. And we talked before, he was one of those from the Battle of Badr. And then when he started spreading these rumours, Abu Bakr Siddiq got very upset, understandably, because the rumours are about his daughter. So then Abu Bakr Siddiq stopped giving sadaqah to Mistah, and then he made an oath. Wallahi, I will never give him another, dirham or, iota or penny, whatever. So Allah is reminding Abu Bakr Siddiq in the Qur'an, in these verses, let not the people of money and grace, and sort of the good people stop supporting the fuqara, the muhajirun, the masakin. Let them forgive and forget, essentially. Don't you like it that Allah forgives you? So forgive them and move on. So Abu Bakr Siddiq, obviously got the hint. He carried on and probably gave more charity to Mistah after this event. And again, you've got to think of how hard it potentially would have been, and unless you've got really strong faith, to keep on giving to people like that who've done this type of thing, who've really stabbed you in the back, who've really gone and propagated things, undermined you, etc., etc. So it's very difficult. It's a natural reaction to stop giving him money, stop giving him support, stop trusting him. But Allah's saying, look, you've just got to look at your actions and rise above it. So Abu Bakr Siddiq, he did kafara for the oath. So he's taken an oath. He's not going to do this again. He's not going to give him any more money. So he has to break the oath. And then for breaking the oath, he needs to give a kafara. Something like, fasting for 3 days or feeding so many poor people. And then, as I say, he used to give him money for as long as Abu Bakr Siddiq was alive. And we also talked about how Aisha, she's talked in the story about Zainab bint Jahsh, and says, look, I will not cause my eyes and ears to fall into sin. Wallahi, I only know good of Aisha. So that was the response that Aisha's recording that Zainab gave when she was asked about these allegations. And again, the Prophet is going around asking people what do they think. He's trying to build the case either way. And we talked before how Zainab and Aisha were rivals for the affection of the Prophet ﷺ. So anyone who didn't have such a strong iman, this would have been the perfect opportunity to stick the knife in, or say something to the Prophet ﷺ, or even just start being one of those to spread these rumors. But Zainab, she rose above all of that. She didn't get involved in any of those things, right? And Aisha appreciated that, and Aisha later mentions, and it's recorded by Urwa, that Aisha would never accept anyone to speak ill of Hassan bin Thabit, and we've talked about Hassan, the poet, as well. And despite these, three people, Hamnah, Hassan, and Mistah, they were whipped 80 lashes for spreading the rumor. These aren't the ones who invented it. These aren't the ones who came up with the lie. They just were guilty, but they were guilty of gossiping, of spreading the rumors. Even if they did it in a technically correct way, well, not correct, but technically sort of a loopholey way, where they're just basically, have you heard what people are saying? So that's one way people try to get around it, because they're not lying. They're saying, have you heard, this is what people are saying? And it's true, this is what people are saying. But they are propagating that rumor and lie by virtue of doing that. So again, we just really need to be careful how we go about these things. So and Allah, says that the munafiqun, they are the ones who started it, but they are the ones who are being let off. So the punishment was only for the three, Sahabi, the three Muslims, right? The munafiqeen who were involved in that, they weren't given any punishment in this life. And the reason for that, the scholars say, is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't want to decrease their punishment in the next life. So he basically let them off in this life. And the way the Islamic Sharia works, and the hudud, is if you serve your time in this life, it gets wiped off your balance sheet, and you're not even going to be asked about it on the Day of Judgment. So therefore you won't be punished for it in the afterlife. So if you do something evil, bad, sin, and you get punished for it by the hudud or whatever in this life, then it's completely taken off your slate, and you don't get asked about it at all. So Allah didn't want that to happen for these people because of the enormity of what they've done. So he says, look, and this is the right of Allah, and it's only exercised through the Prophet ﷺ. It's not exercised nowadays. So the punishment was let off for them so that Allah could torment them even more for this after questioning on the Day of Judgment. And then Aisha, she sort of carries on with the hadith, as a very long hadith. As for the man they accused, he himself swore by Allah, I have never raised the veil of a woman in my life. So he's, up until that point, he'd never been married. He had no real interest in women. He was, just going about his own business. And that's what he said. So when he's asked, is this true? He said, look, I've never even raised the veil of a woman in my life. So he's not, approached anyone at all. And some of the scholars say he died without marrying. Some say, he married a bit later on, and then he was shaheed in one of the battles during the time of Ibn al-Khattab. But one interesting story related to Safwan bin Muattal is that, and this is probably earlier on, Hassan is spreading these rumors and lies and gossiping, and people know it's Hassan saying it, and it just basically got the better of Safwan. So he took his sword and he bashed Hassan with the blunt edge of the sword or the handle, and knocked Hassan out, and sort of giving him what he deserves, taking the law into his own hands, he felt. So Hassan, he probably realized he was in the wrong, but then his relatives and his tribesfolk, they tried to exact revenge on Safwan for hitting Hassan. But then Safwan says to them, look, I'm a man who, when my blood boils, I don't know how to give poetry like Hassan. I know how to give beatings. So this is who I am. I can't do fancy, counter propaganda like Hassan can. I'm a man of fighting, and if something riles me up, that's how I respond. So then Hassan, and his family, they went to complain to the Prophet ﷺ. This is what's happened, right? So they brought the case to the Prophet ﷺ, and the Prophet ﷺ, basically ruled in favor of Hassan and said, look, Safwan, he's spreading the rumors and he shouldn't, but you shouldn't have struck him. And then the Prophet ﷺ sort of trying to mediate further between these, says, okay, he is in the wrong, Safwan, for hitting you, but Hassan, can you forgive him? Because you shouldn't be doing that. He didn't say that, but he just asked him, can you forgive him? So Hassan forgave him. So he was gifted as sort of compensation, I think a little garden for that. So that's another sort of side story related to that. Also, in the Qur'an, we heard how Allah says, why didn't you say like the person, who said, look, it's none of our business. As Muslims, when we hear stuff like this, we should say, we should not be talking about this and just say it's an evil lie. And this is quoting directly Ayyub al Ansari, having a discussion with his wife. So his wife, bounds into the room and she says, have you heard? And as soon as she says that, Abu Ayyub says, stop. We shouldn't be talking about this stuff. It's an evil lie. And this is between a husband and wife, right? So Allah is so happy with that. He refers to that in these verses in Surah Noor. So look, you're not even in marriage, you're not there to backbite other people, right? That's not licensed to get involved in these types of gossiping and spreading rumors. So that's again that's the reference in Surah Noor where Allah is praising indirectly Abu Ayyub for saying, look, stop, let's not go there. Okay, and how many of us, when we sort of first come across this, would actually say that? We'd rather listen to what's going on. We may or may not spread it further, but at least we listen to it. And again, we'll get asked about these on the Day of Judgment. So that shows the level that some people have of iman. So that's essentially the story of the ifk against Aisha. And there's so many lessons we can learn from that. But just the final thing before we go on to the lessons is about a month later, the Prophet ﷺ turns to Umar ibn al-Khattab, and we talked about this, and he said, this is when a few weeks after all these instances, and the Prophet ﷺ used to, we said, stand up for Jummah khutbah, and then Abdullah bin Ubai, he would stand up beforehand and say, listen to the Prophet, he is the messenger, and you should all listen to what he has to say, sometimes in a mocking way. But now, Jummah, when he stands up to try to say that, everybody pulls him down, everyone shouts down Abdullah ibn Ubai. So the Prophet, after that, he turns around to Umar and said, look, Umar, if I had killed him, or had him killed, Abdullah ibn Ubai, when you asked me to, then a large number of people would have furiously hastened to fight for him. And you can see the loyalty that they had, the tribal loyalty that they had. And the Prophet then goes to Umar ibn Khattab and says, now, on the contrary, if I ask them to kill him, they will do so out of their own free will. And then Umar, sheepishly replied, I swear by Allah that the Prophet's judgment is more sound than mine. So we talked about that before, but it's just nice to wrap that up. And obviously Abdullah bin Ubai, he died soon after that, and again we'll talk about that when it occurs in the Seerah. So just to talk about sort of 15 or 16 different sort of benefits or lessons we can learn from this episode. I won't say it's a sad episode or a sorry episode, because Allah specifically says, don't think it was bad for you, rather that it was good. So what are some of the lessons from this ifk, or the slander? One is, most obviously, very importantly, the evils of slander, of lying, of gossiping. All three of these things are different, and all three are major sins, right? These major sins, right? They are punishable by lashes, right? And we talked about the three people, Mistah, Hassan, and Hamnah. They were all publicly flogged. So accusing a Muslim of adultery, it's a major, major sin. So we shouldn't think about these things as, in a light way. And sometimes we even say it in a joking way, right? Or, a half-hearted way, that you're, when you had an affair, or when so-and-so committed this, or, when you're, casting aspersions of adultery, it's a major sin, and we should be really careful about it. And spreading these rumors or initiating these lies without any evidence, Allah says, look, you really got to be careful. You accusing any other Muslim of adultery, of zina, is a major sin. Hold on, be really careful about it. And then accusing Aisha, the mother of the believers, of something like zina, this is clear kufr now. People just, not allowed to go there. Allah makes it very explicit. And again, there are some sects, who people who do still propagate this lie, and obviously it takes them outside of Islam if you still believe in that, right? Because Allah has exonerated it in the Qur'an. So accusing any Muslim of zina, major sin. Major sins. We really need to be careful what we say. And accusing Aisha of anything like this, it's essentially kufr. And evils of lying, slander, gossiping, we should not carry these rumors, right? We shouldn't be spreading gossip. It's just not what should be done. It's a major sin, right? Like backbiting, like all these other things, right? These are all separate evils, and they all carry their own punishments. Also, Allah will test the believers by various means. And who would have thought the wife of the Prophet ﷺ, Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, and his family, all of these core people would be tested to the core so much for a whole month by something like this, right? So even Aisha and the Prophet ﷺ had to go through their trials, right? So the more Allah loves someone, the more He will test them. But related to that, as we've talked about so many times before, alhamdulillah, with difficulty comes ease, and normally double ease, right? So every time of ease will be followed by difficulty. Every time of difficulty will be followed by ease and ease, right? So Aisha went through some tough times, and it's followed by ease, right? And Allah said, look, good came out of this evil. We need to learn the lessons, right? We've seen how much that Aisha and her whole family suffered, but they were patient. And again, the Ummah learned so many lessons about these really important things through this explicit episode, right? Had this not happened, we may not have learned these lessons in this way. So that's really important. Also, really importantly, it's the level that the munafiqeen, the hypocrites, the enemies of Allah, the enemies of Islam, the enemies of the people who carry dawah, the level that these people go to is just simply beyond the pale, right? And despite Allah saying, don't think it was bad for you, rather it was good for you, but and revealing these ayahs in Surah Noor, the fact that they would resort to trying to assassinate the character of the family of the Prophet ﷺ, especially his wife, it's beyond the pale. And again, there are people in our communities, the people in society, who, when they can't engage with individuals, with dawah carriers or the leaders in the Muslims, they resort to these tactics of character assassination, or excluding, or targeting the wives and the children of these people just to have something against them. So we have to be careful of that. But also another lesson is the fruits of being patient are always ever more sweet, right? By being patient, sometimes being forced to be patient and turning to Allah, Allah will vindicate us, right? If you are truthful and sincere to Allah, He will help you when no one else will, right? Muslims, we should be really vigilant and care for the reputation of other Muslims, right? We shouldn't be happy when we hear evil things. We should assume the best of each other. You hear something about someone, you say, "Oh, that can't be true." Give them excuses. Assume the best of your brothers and sisters. Don't immediately jump to the negative thing, or be tempted to for your own sort of titillation, accept these rumors, right? This is a major sin. So we should be careful for the reputation of other Muslims. Don't be happy when we hear evil things that have happened or bad things that have happened, right? We should make excuses. We should assume the best of each other. And even today, too many people, within the Muslim community are too quick to jump on, half-truths and rumors and consider them true, right? And often then go on and propagate those, right, without trying to verify the truth, right? So, we should, be careful about these things. And here you had a situation where, Aisha, she couldn't defend herself for a whole month. She was ill, right? And again, when other people, when sort of they're not around, they're busy, or they're out of the country, or they're away, that's not the time you should be, spreading these things. But you'll find the munafiqeen, that's when they use that opportunity and impugn the reputation of the Muslims. And the people who are hearing it shouldn't stand for it and should call them out. Allah says that this thing should not happen again. We need to be careful, make sure these types of things don't happen again. And again, just a sort of a side lesson. Although we know that there are evil things that happen in the Ummah, happen in society, we shouldn't talk openly and spread this fahisha, this evil amongst ourselves in this gossipy way. Did you hear about so-and-so and so-and-so? Did you see them? Da, 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 da. Because by virtue of talking about these things, what happens is that we make it acceptable. It normalizes that behavior. So-and-so's got a girlfriend. So-and-so went to this place. So-and-so did that, right? What you're doing is you're normalizing that behavior. You're making it more acceptable, and then it makes it more attractive for other people. Whereas if the public opinion is one whereby it's completely unacceptable, and you reinforce that, and people are less inclined or drawn to that. So if there is this evil in the community, and I'm not saying brush things under the carpet, if there is this evil, we need to forbid the evil, call it out, but not to sensationalize it, not to make it a self-fulfilling prophecy by normalizing it, by saying these things are happening. Everyone's got a girlfriend nowadays. By saying that, it makes people more inclined to have girlfriends because everyone's got a girlfriend. Whereas if you just keep on hammering the fact that we shouldn't have girlfriends, or we shouldn't do this, we shouldn't do that, people are less inclined to do that, even though it is happening in the community. So it's a subtle thing, but we shouldn't be exaggerating about these things. We shouldn't be spreading immorality within the Ummah, right? But only talk about what is necessary in order to forbid the evil. Okay? And again, think good of the Ummah. Don't think bad of the Ummah all the time. And the lesson that Abu Bakr as-Siddiq was taught is that forgive people and continue to do charity and to do good. Right? That Allah is reminding us that, look, you need to forgive people. Right? You expect Allah to forgive you for all the things you keep on doing wrong, us. we need to forgive other people as well. And it's astounding there are people in the community who don't forgive other people, who don't even ask for forgiveness. Right? Even, at times when you're going through difficult times, or if you're going for Hajj, or if it's, if a calamity has befallen you, these are the times you ask for forgiveness. But we shouldn't be arrogant enough to stop giving charities, stop forgiving people, and stop doing good. So a really important lesson. And linked to one of the other earlier things, that Allah himself is saying in the Qur'an that he is jealous about protecting the reputation of the Muslims, right? It's a serious crime to accuse someone of adultery, whether it's male or female. I mean, it's worse if you're accusing the female, right? It is, because the reputation is often more important in the community's eyes. But Allah says, look, you shouldn't be talking and spreading these things. You've got to stop it, nip it in the bud. And the Prophet, and Allah says, look, he's serious about us keeping the reputation of Muslims good, right? So that's really important. And then related to that, the fact that the high honor and status of our mother Aisha, right? She's been vindicated. She's pure. She's the daughter of the pure. She's the daughter of Bakr Siddiq, right? And she's the wife of the Prophet ﷺ, right? So Allah from above the seven heavens, freed her from these accusations. So there should be no controversy about our love and affection for the household of the Prophet ﷺ, which includes Aisha, right? And so we shouldn't be saying bad things about her. And another lesson to learn is that even the Prophet ﷺ, he suffered so much. He suffered for a whole month listening to these gossip and rumors, and there's no way he could get around that. Only when Aisha got better could he start to investigate it, right? And obviously, he didn't know the unseen. He didn't have knowledge of the unseen. He didn't know ilm al-ghaib. If this was something that he had control over, he would have just said it early on. But Allah is testing him with withholding revelation for a month to see how things pan out, right? And again, it shows that the Prophet didn't know the unseen. Obviously, we talked about in the verses that reveal the rulings with regards to adultery, the rulings with regard to falsely accusing, the rulings with regard to the need for 4 witnesses, and again, the rulings are, for and there's a lot of fiqh that behind all of that in terms of these 4 witnesses. They can't be conspiring. They can't all do it together. And there's other nuances in the legislation. It needs to, the exposure needs to happen almost by accident. You can't spy and investigate and eavesdrop like that. And the punishment of flogging 80 lashes for those who falsely accuse people, right? And then they're considered fasik and you cannot take their testimony. And again, goes back to this thing that accusing someone of adultery is a major sin. And then why wasn't Ibn Ubai punished? So there are a few the scholars have said there are 2 or 3 different reasons, and we talked about that. That essentially his punishment is reserved for the hereafter, the Day of Judgement, or even in the grave, the Day of Judgement, and in the hereafter. So if he was punished in this life, that sin he wouldn't be held accountable for that on the Day of Judgment. So Allah is reserving his punishment and of the other hypocrites. And Abdullah ibn Ubai, like many hypocrites and leaders and people in positions of power, fame and influence, they have a clever way of keeping their tracks clear. It's all unattributable, right? Or they'll only say things to their really close coterie of people who are brown nosers, right? Who aren't going to say anything against them. So they're very careful on how they initiate these lies and rumors. They're very careful on who they choose to then forward and spread the gossip. And you'll see this as a really clever way that these hypocrites operate. Plausible deniability. It wasn't me, right? And no one's going to adopt them in because they're in positions of power, influence, money. And we see that in the communities again now. So the hypocrites, the people who are against Islam, against the Muslims, against the carriers of the dawah, they're careful who they nominate to spread these lies and the calumny. And again, to be punished, it's punishable through witnesses. And these people who they talk to in their inner circle, they aren't going to adopt them in, and they're not going to confess themselves, right? So that's probably another reason why the hypocrites weren't punished. And linked to that, obviously, if we talked about this before, that the enemies of Islam, the enemies of the Muslims, the enemies of the dawah carriers, if they can't talk about these issues with individuals, they don't know how to engage with the truth. They resort to these really dirty tactics. They try to assassinate the character of the individual. It doesn't work. They will then go on to assassinate, exclude, boycott, or make false accusations against the family of these people, the wives or the children, right? So again, this is an important lesson. And finally, slightly linked to some of the earlier things, and more so this. That's why, especially with the leaders in the community that we have, the leaders of the Ummah, it's really important to protect their reputation, because the enemies of Islam, especially the hypocrites and especially the non-Muslims, they will do everything they can to bring down the prominent Muslims amongst the community, right? And, trumped up charges, lies and fabrication. We've talked about that. And then the Ummah should be careful and wary of that and think good of their fellow Muslims, especially their leaders. I'm not saying the leaders can't do any wrong, but we just need to be wary when the hypocrites and the enemies of Islam, they try to smear the good dawah carriers. So these are some of the lessons from this incident of the ifk, the slander against Aisha. So I'll finish there. Inshallah, we'll carry on with a few other instances between now and the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, which is, I think, the next major event, inshallah. So do remember us in your prayers. Do remember the Ummah in your prayers. And if you've got any questions, queries, comments, clarifications, do email, WhatsApp, YouTube, do DM me or get in touch, inshallah, and we'll try to address those. So inshallah, until the next time, take care. Assalamu alaikum. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. جزاك الله خير everybody. Assalamu alaikum.